So what's up, guys? Today we're just going to give a quick market update on where Bitcoin's at. It's been moving up these past few days, and a lot of people are asking, where's it going to go? Did we hit the bottom? Is this it, right? So let's just go ahead and break down the charts. So this is what Bitcoin looks like in the monthly time frame. We went down obviously to 59K at the start of June on June 6th. Now it's June 16, and you see that it's been moving up. A lot of YouTubers and people have been saying that, okay, this is the bottom. I'm not so sure that this is the bottom, but I will explain why it might still be a good time to accumulate a bit of it, even if it's not the bottom, right? And where is this going to go? So let's look at the charts and see where this is going to go. So instead of looking at this in this view, it's important to like zoom out into the bigger picture and see historically what has happened, and that'll give us like an idea of what will happen in the future. So like if you just keep zooming out, you can see that yeah, we've been moving up. This is 3 month, year to date. You can see like this pattern showing up where it's like there's a crash going up, now this crash going up. And then if you look year to date, this is what it looks like. And you can see that there's like these moves that are sort of range bound. But after every crash, you can see that there's a slight uptrend. And if you look at the maximum, this is what it looks like, right? So even though this looks like it's going up a lot, it's just kind of like a blip in the grand scheme of things, right? So where is Bitcoin headed now? And is this a good time to start buying, right? So this is Bitcoin. Trading view just gives us like a more granular view. So one thing I want to see here is, what does the price of Bitcoin look like at this stage in the cycle when we're looking at it in other cycles, right? So we did these arrows, which is basically how many bars it took for the top of Bitcoin to bottom. So for example, this one's the top and then this one's like the bottom, right? So this took around 371 bars. And we just like extrapolated that here. That would put us to October 26. So late October, late October, late to mid October, or it might even reach around November, right? So even we did this for like 2 or 3 cycles. We can see that most of these cycles did follow the same kind of time frame. The first one here was like 430 bars. The one after that's 360 bars. This one's 370 bars. And if we just put like the average is like 370, 360, that will put us around October. So I do think October, mid-October to early November will be the cycle bottom. Just by looking at previous cycles, historically, that is what has been happening, right? And if we look at the current move, this little blip upwards in the past week where people are like excited of this is going to be the next move, right? We can just like see what that looks like in previous cycles and see if this move has similarities to the previous moves. So from the top, this move is around these many bars, right? 255 bars. Let's just see what Bitcoin was doing 255 bars in previous cycles. So in the previous cycle, we just put 255 bars from the top. You can see like there was this crash and there was this, pump, almost exactly the same as where we are now, right? So 255 bars in the previous cycle also gave us this little pump, and then it went on to go back and at least retest that low and even go lower, right? So I'm not sure if the second move lower will happen, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna retest like the 59K or 60K. That'll happen. And if we look at even the previous one, just get this previous bar pattern as well into the previous cycle. We just align it to the top. You can see that in this top, we had this tiny top as well, right? So there was also a spike up at around this time before it like went down, and then ultimately it capitulated again. And if we look at the first cycle that we can see here, around 275 bars, you can see that we had this big drop, and then this bar-like pattern is actually also around this local top, and then it went all the way back down, right? So coincidentally, right now, this 255 bars where we're at relative to the cycle peak is exactly where a lot of these previous patterns ended up topping, right? So right now, having at least a local top, right? So right now, if I like just close this, because it's just basically a copy, you can see here, this little move up here is probably going to be another slightly local top. And I think we're going to retest the 59K, 60K level in the coming days. And there's a possibility that we reach lower valuations around October, right? So if we look at the charts also, the charts and the risk levels actually kind of show this pattern as well, right? So if we look at the back-tested risk, the bottoms that we're seeing right now should at least be like in the 0.2 or 0.25 level. That's going to be like 53, 57K on the back-tested. And if we just look at all possible values, here it can possibly reach like 40K, right? So 40 to 50K looks like a reasonable range for the bottom. And if we look at even other things such as the expected gains. So this, for example, the expected gains, and we're just looking at the rolling daily average. You can see that on the daily, Bitcoin usually reaches like these lows at around 0.99. We're around here, which is still pretty far, right? If we try to do this at monthly view, you can see that we reach like 0.90 and 86. So even if there's like an increasing trend here, 86, 90, that's like 4%. So this should be like 94. We're still at 96. So there's probably still room here to fall as well. So when looking at these things, what am I seeing is going to happen, right? So what I see that this current move that people are pretty excited about, this last 7-day move, right, of Bitcoin going back up, is probably just normal volatility in the crypto market. During big crashes, there's usually counter trend rallies that go back up, and it like just plays with your emotion, right? But I don't think that this is going to be the cycle bottom. I don't think it's going to be fully going back up to all-time highs from here, right? So all these other charts say that the bottom is still kind of not here. And even if we look at the fear and greed index, for example, this is kind of the pattern that we're seeing, right? So if we just look at the past 4 years, this is really a really common pattern, right? So in these large moves down, so for example, up here, this is the price of Bitcoin, this is the fear and greed index. Up here, the price is high. You can see it fall down here, this kind of big fall from 122K to like 64K, right? It always leads to like fake outs going back up. So this fall to 84K went back up to like 92K. And you can see the fear and greed index spiked here, right? So usually after big crashes, there are spikes in fear and greed index. So because the market likes to play with emotions. The market's not supposed to be easy to navigate emotional wise, right? So now we're seeing the same thing play out after this big crash from 80K to like 59K. We have the fear and greed index go back up again because the price is going up. But if you look at all historical patterns, usually this is pretty normal. During big crashes, there are small counter trend rallies, but whether or not that's durable or not remains to be seen. So in terms of time-wise, you can see that these are normal local tops that happen in almost every cycle. So like the past 3 cycles we saw that this time frame indicates like kind of like local tops, right? So that's one. So this probably might just be a local top. And also in terms of the price risk and the geometric gains, it seems like this is not the bottom. So okay, so I think that this isn't the bottom yet, but is it a good time to accumulate, right? So I don't think it's wise to all in the bottom, right? Because you never really know where the bottom is. All we can do is make educated guesses on where the bottom is and hedge accordingly to see whether or not waiting is worth it and how much we're willing to invest now versus the potential of losing the bottom, right? Because there's a big difference in like predicting the exact bottom and making like tons of money versus not timing the exact bottom but still making a lot of money, right? And here we really want to maximize our probabilities, right? If there is a probability that Bitcoin will still fall, but there's also a probability that this is the bottom, right? What is the percentage of our like free-flowing capital that we should invest now in order to capitalize on that, right? So I made this chart wherein you can see what is the maximum gain that you can get and what is the expected gain that you can get from gambling on the bottom, right? So basically how this works is this black line is the distribution of like risk levels that have positive expected values for the yearly and 2-year. And what you do is obviously lower risk levels give like higher expected values, but they're less likely to happen. So for example, these 0.2 and 0.15, there's only like 2%, 1% chance, right? So you can actually spread out your money in different ways and see what is the maximum you'll get if it actually reaches that. If it doesn't reach that, then the money that you would have allocated there gains no value, right? Because you just have cash. You're just sitting on the cash, waiting for that move to happen, and it never happens, right? So you can actually calculate what your expected gain is and your max gain. So you can see you can actually distribute it differently. So you can distribute your allocation this way, or this way. You can spread it out, and that changes what the expected value is and what the max value is. So you can trade some of your max value, you can trade some of your max value for more consistent value. And this is like the market, right? You could invest a little bit now and be able to invest that money if Bitcoin crashes, but still make money because Bitcoin ends up going to all-time highs in the future. Or you can wait to invest more money later, but have the risk that Bitcoin doesn't reach that valuation, right? So you could be waiting for 40K, but it never happens, right? And these numbers actually give you an idea of how much you would gain on average if you waited. And if you waited, yeah. So for example, if you played 1,000 games, only 1% of the time it reaches the lowest risk level. This is what you'll get on average if you have this distribution. You can actually put everything in the lowest risk level, right? So if you bet everything on the lowest risk level, which is like 40K Bitcoin, there's only a 2% chance that it reaches. There's only a 1.5% chance that it reaches 40K. But if that happens, you'll make 157%. Although, if you played this 1,000 times, since there's only 1.5% chance that that happens out of 1,000 times, if you average all of those trial runs, the average theoretical gain that you'll get is 2%. So if we played a simulation 1,000,000 times and there was only a 1.5% chance it reaches 40K, we don't know the parallel universes that happen, but this is kind of the analogy that I want to make. In all of those trial runs of BTC, you would have made 157K only 1.5% of the time, and so the average of those million games would only be 2%. Right? So do you want to increase the probability of you winning from those games, but you're gonna like sacrifice some of the maximum gains that you're gonna have? So for example, here you spread it out to 0.35, you lose a bit, so you like lose 40% on your best gain, but you gain like a bunch more because you're covering a larger slice of the pie. Right. So two things that I think is worth noting right now. One, I think that it's sort of an okay time to buy a little bit of Bitcoin. But two, I do think Bitcoin will still fall. So both things can be true, right? I think that Bitcoin will still fall to around 50K. And I think this is a local top. Because if we look at the historical patterns, we usually have sort of like a local top at this level. So I think we're going to have a local top. I think Bitcoin will fall. Sorry. So I think there's a local top. I think Bitcoin will fall. But I still think that some exposure to Bitcoin is okay. So when it reached around 60K the other day, I bought a little bit. So I have around 20% of the exposure that I want in Bitcoin in my cash position. And I still have like 80% of it. So if it does fall, like I'm thinking, I will scale more in. And yeah, so this is what I think is going to happen. So I think that Bitcoin's okay to buy now, just a little bit, but I do think it's going to fall. So both things can happen at the same time, right? You don't have to all in a single number to make money in crypto, right? You don't have to predict the exact bottom. You can predict that a certain range of values is okay and like maximize your risk-adjusted returns if you're playing like this game in the long run. So yeah, that's what I think Bitcoin is at now. This move has been happening for a while, but I think this is normal volatility. Bitcoin usually does spike after these big drops, and you can see it here in the fear and greed index. So like if you just look at the past year, right, we had this massive drop, the fear and greed index falls, and now the price is going up, and the fear and greed index is going up again. Yeah, so markets like kind of like forgive so fast, right? People always think it's the bottom. So back in 70K, people thought it was the bottom. There was like it like went back up, fear and greed index like spikes, and it went back down. So these are just normal rubber bands in the market. I think even if we look at the weekly time frame, so if we just change this to the weekly time frame and then show like the Bollinger Bands, I can just show you. Yeah, in the weekly time frame, we're not even hitting like this middle band with a 20-week SMA and 21-week SMA and 20-week EMA, right? So if we look at the Bollinger Bands, usually the price would like slam into this middle band and then it will be rejected and go down. So usually in downtrends, this is what happens. So for example, here you can see it hit the Bollinger Band, it went down, it hit the Bollinger Band, and then it went down. And when it's above it, it like kind of gets guided by it going up. So Bitcoin can even reach around 68K on the 68K, 69K on the weekly, and it'll still be in this downward trend, right? So it's kind of hard to say, it's kind of hard to feel that in the moment because, humans are very temporal beings. We're only like consuming this. Even when we consume this every day, it seems like, oh yeah, this recovery is amazing, 60K to 65K. But if you zoom out and compare it to like all these different trends, you're gonna realize that Bitcoin plays this game all the time where it like yo-yos right after major lows and it plays with your emotions. So, yeah, so that's where I think I'm at. I have some exposure to Bitcoin when it crashed at 60K. I still think it's a decent time to buy, but I do think that Bitcoin will fall more, and I do think that this is a local top. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on the market. Just a small update. So yeah, if you guys like this video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.